Hello, welcome to Chapter Book Storytime. I'm Ellen from EVPL Oakland, and on today's edition of the Variety Pack, I have an adventure series from the wilds of Alaska. It's called Off the Map by Meika Hashimoto. Work together or sink together. This is a story of Marlo, and as the story opens, she's excited about a canoe trip that she's going to be making in the Alaskan wilderness with her mother and her dog, Cheerio. It's been a tough year for Marlo. About 2 months before the end of school, Marlo's father decided that he didn't want to be a part of their family anymore, and so he moved away to Texas, and she hasn't heard from him since. It was really hard for Marlo, but she had her mother and her best friend Amos there to help her get through it. So now they're heading out into the Alaskan wilderness. Marlo's mom is a professional canoe guide, so she knows what she's doing, and Marlo's in good hands. We're going to start up here at about the end of chapter 1, where Marlo and her mother have made a long drive to their destination, and they're just arriving at the place where they're going to be getting their canoe and putting it in the water to start their journey. The sound of moving water and a sudden stop to the truck's gentle rhythm wakes me up. I start up and look around, rubbing my eyes. We're in an empty parking lot, except for a van with Pete's Canoe Expeditions written across the side in bright green letters. Hitched to the back of the van is a trailer with two canoes mounted on it. A woman in corduroy overalls and a sun hat, and a guy with dusty jeans and a plaid red jacket wave to us as they untether a canoe from the trailer. Mom pulls the key out of the ignition and tucks it in her pocket. She turns to me, a faint grin on her face. "I've got a surprise for you, Marlo." She steps down from the truck and beckons for me to follow her. As I hop out from the passenger side, I'm confused. 2 canoes? Is Mom expecting each of us to go solo as some sort of test? Then we round the trailer and I see a dark purple station wagon that had been hidden from view by the van. It's got a roof rack painted turquoise and 2 large rust spots near the back fender and half a dozen faded decals plastered to the rear window. I know this car. I would recognize it anywhere. And when I do, my belly fills with ice. Chapter 2. Maybe this was all an awful dream. Maybe I'm still at home lying in bed, and Cheerio's tongue or tail or woof is going to wake me up, and it'll still be the morning before Mom and I head out on our trip. Our trip that was supposed to be just the 2 of us. I squinch my eyes closed as hard as I can, pinch my arm to try to wake myself, and then open my eyes. Nothing has changed. I'm still staring at the same old station wagon, and now a tall, lanky body with a familiar bearded face is getting out of the driver's seat. "Please, please, please let it just be Terry," I plead in my head. "Terry, sorry we're late," Mom says. She gives me the side-eye. "We were delayed a little getting out of the house." "No worries, Caroline," said Terry. "We haven't been waiting long." I fight the urge to run back to the truck and barrel myself in the footwell. If Terry isn't alone, then I bet $1 million I know who else he's with. "Hey, Mom, I forgot something in the truck. I'll be right back." I stumble toward the Toyota and hop inside, shutting the door hard to block out the air between me and what's going to happen once I open it up again. The only person Terry would take to go on a joint canoe trip with Mom and me is Amos. Amos, my former best friend. Amos, who hasn't spoken to me for 27 excruciating long days and counting. A woof from the rear brings me back to the present. Cheerio appears at my ear, nosing against my cheek. I lean behind me and give her a fierce hug. I want to stay tucked up in the truck forever. Just me and Cheerio and our uncomplicated relationship. But then Mom comes over and opens the passenger side door. "Is everything okay, Marlo?" she asks me. "I thought having Amos and his dad join us would be a fun surprise, but you seem a little thrown." I have 2 options. I can tell Mom the truth about Amos and me, which I've been hiding from her. I still don't fully understand what happened, and the last thing I want is to have to explain it to her. She might even try to get me to make up with him, which sounds horrible and humiliating. No way! Or I can pretend that nothing's wrong. I do want to go on the river. I don't want to have endured 10 hours of bumpy driving for nothing. I'll just keep my distance. So I decide to go with the lie. Oh, I'm fine. I just remembered that Cheerio hasn't been out to pee in ages, I said, hopping out and pressing the seat lever. Cheerio bounds out and immediately heads for the nearest bush. All right, then, you can say hi to Amos later, Mom says, giving me a weird look. Let's get our gear out and park it next to the put-in. I haul out my backpack and swing it onto my shoulders. As I bring it over to the riverbank, my breath catches. Everything in Alaska feels big and wild, and the Yukon River is no exception. I take in the swift, pale blue water that courses down and around a wide bend. Ripples and eddies gurgle across the surface, making the river seem alive. I bend down and dip my hand into the water, gasping at its iciness. I wouldn't want to overturn the canoe in that glacial bath. The folks from the shuttle service my mom hired have already set the canoes down by the riverbank and driven off. I unstrap my backpack and huck it into one of the canoes. As I turn to get a second load of supplies from the truck, I come face to face with Amos. He's gripping a backpack of his own, which he dumps into the other canoe. "Did you know about this?" he asks me. Maybe asks is too neutral of a word. It came out more like an accusation. I shake my head. Mom just told me she had a fun surprise for me. I never told her about what happened. Amos crosses his arms and rolls his eyes up to the sky. Okay, let's just pretend to get along until this trip is over. I'm on the verge of shouting, will you just tell me what your deal is? But then I see Amos's dad tottering toward us and carrying a large bear can. Fine, whatever, I mutter, only loud enough for Amos to hear. Hey there, Marlo! Terry struggles to lift the bear can into the second canoe. Cheerio is trotting right behind him. After he manages to drop the can into the canoe, Terry crouches down and wraps her in a bear hug. How's my favorite poocheroo? He croons. Cheerio's eyes roll back in absolute happiness as Terry scratches her butt, and despite myself, I crack up. Terry makes no secret of the fact that he would steal Cheerio for me in a heartbeat. I get it, and I don't mind. A piece of stray dog fur floats into Terry's nose. He sneezes and then looks up at me. Been a while. You staying out of trouble? He asks. Never, I reply, and Terry grins. It's how we greeted each other when I used to come over to Amos's house, and the familiarity lifts my spirits. Just a hair. I'm glad you're here, I tell him, and I mean it. Plus, it doesn't hurt to rub it in Amos's face that his dad's presence is more wanted than his own. Terry bangs his thumb on the thwart and lets out a yell as the bear can slides into the hull. Yeah, your mom has been after me to try out canoeing for years. Glad I'm finally taking the plunge. I groan. Oh, such a bad pun, Terry. Besides, you're not supposed to take the plunge unless you want icicles for feet. When I'm finishing rolling my eyes at Terry's joke, I pause. I always assumed that Terry knew how to canoe. It's the same way I assume everyone knows how to do all the outdoor things in Alaska. Hike, cross-country ski, ATV, paddle. You've never canoed before? Terry shrugs. Well, I've rafted once or twice, but only on guided tours. But Amos here is going to do all the heavy lifting. I'll just be up front providing the muscle. With canoeing, there's a huge difference between being in the bow, the front, versus the stern, the back. Whoever's in back needs to have the skills to steer the boat and tells the person up front when to switch sides. Whoever's in front doesn't have to do anything more than paddle, and maybe holler if the boat is going to hit something sticking out of the river. Amos and I had gone to canoe camp for 3 summers in elementary school, but I had no idea that his dad was a newbie, and now we were going to spend 4 days on the water together. I want this trip to turn into some fairy tale where Amos and I figure out how to have fun with each other again, and Terry's dad becomes a master canoeer, and my mom makes her famous hot cocoa while we camp out at night singing under the stars. But fairy tales are make-believe for a reason. I'm going to skip ahead to Chapter 4. It'll be day 2 of their canoeing expedition. Chapter 4. The next morning I wake with my face pressed against the cold, wet side of my tent. Condensation and icy dawn temperatures make for an unpleasant way to start the day. Cheerio had started off sleeping at my feet when we had gone to bed, but sometime during the night she decided to wedge herself in between me and Mom. Now she's lying in the primest of prime spots where she could snuggle against two sources of warmth. I wormed my way around in my sleeping bag to face her and get a mouthful of fur. I want to tell her to move, but when I listen to her long, happy snores and occasional "I'm dreaming about chasing and catching a squirrel" yip, I decide that I can let her slumber for a little longer. I stick a hand out and scratch Cheerio on her rump. I love this nutty mutt beyond words. Cheerio lifts her muzzle and she smiles. Then she gives a good stretch, inadvertently kicking my mom with all four stiff straight legs. "Honey, what time is it?" My mom opens her eyes and gently bends Cheerio's legs back into tucked position. Mom's phone is hanging up in a little mesh pocket on the ceiling along with our headlamps. I press the home button sleepily and the time flashes across the screen. 6 a.m., I tell her. Mom yawns. "Wow, that's late." She's right. If you're up after 6 on the river, especially during the height of summer when it gets light at 4, it counts as sleeping in. Mom and I swap our PJs for our day clothes and wriggle out of our sleeping bags. Mom zips open the tent flap and Cheerio bounds out, eager for her morning pee and squirrel patrol. While Mom fixes us oatmeal, loaded with raisins and walnuts and sweetened with brown sugar, and chats with Terry, I feed Cheerio and pack up. Breakfast isn't quite ready when I'm done, but Mom has heated up some water. I make a mug of hot cocoa, Swiss Miss with the little marshmallows, always, and take Cheerio up to the river. As I sip my drink, we watch the mist float over the river and across the small mountains in the distance. The skies are clear and there's a snap in the air that feels like good weather is going to hold. Usually being out in nature feels uncomplicated. Other than getting to where you want to go, there's not much else to do except enjoy everything surrounding you. I inhale the cool air, tasting it on the flat of my tongue, and gaze out at the beauty around me. I want to sink into the moment. But I can't. Not while my ex-best friend is being a jerk and there are 3 long days to go with him. I finish my cocoa and I head back to camp. At breakfast, Mom pulls out the map and goes over the route with us. I try to listen, but I keep on getting distracted by Cheerio, trying to eat my oatmeal. Once we finish cleaning up, we pack our gear and load everything up. I've coaxed Cheerio into our canoe and I'm all ready to push off when Mom says, "Marlo, hold on a minute." "What's up?" I ask. Mom looks over at the other canoe, and I follow her gaze to the bow. I can see a few nicks and dings that weren't there at the beginning of the trip. Mom waves at Terry and Amos, who are putting on their life jackets. "Hey fellas, I'm a little worried that you might end up seriously damaging your canoe if you continue to paddle together. Why don't we switch boats today? Terry, you can ride with me in our canoe, and I'll make sure we steer clear of any surprise rocks that might come up." As my stomach flips, Mom turns to me. "Also, I know you and Amos haven't hung out for a few weeks. You should spend some time together." "Yes, that's a great idea," says Terry, oblivious to the way Amos's eyebrows are lifting almost out of his head. I open my mouth to protest, but then stop. If I complain, Mom will ask why, and I won't have a good answer for her. Instead, I say, "What about my stuff? I need my bag." "Oh, don't worry about that," Mom answers easily. "We're all going to the same place eventually." "But I need..." My voice trails off. There really isn't anything that I'll use before camp, at least not that I can think of on the spot. "Fine," Amos mimics, his voice straining to be neutral. He's in the same boat as I am, I think, wincing at my mental pun. "Cheerio can go with you, of course," Mom adds. "Dead weight," Amos mutters. "What?" Terry asks. "Nothing," Amos replies. "Okay," I say, trying not to sound resigned. "Come on, Cheerio." Cheerio and I clamber out of the canoe and head over to Amos. "Yay," I say. "That's the spirit," Amos replies, equally deadpan. We launch the boats and start paddling. I don't know why, but it was a lot easier when Mom was in the stern. Amos and I just don't seem to match strokes, and it feels like only one of us is ever paddling. To make things worse, Cheerio, who was as calm as a napping cat yesterday, seems to sense the helter-skelter feel of our movements. Every few minutes she stands up and makes a little circle or tries to clamber onto the gear, attempting to get comfortable. When she does it, I have to stop paddling and turn around to help settle her. The boat rocks side to side every time she moves, and more than once the water creeps up only an inch below the gunwale. Amos doesn't say anything, but I can feel frustration vibrating off of him. Even though Terry is still way new at canoeing, because Cheerio is being so restless, it's not too long before he and Mom pull ahead of us. As they grow farther and farther away, Mom looks over her shoulder. "Make sure to keep river right," she calls to us before her canoe disappears around a bend. The river winds and twirls around the landscape as we paddle in silence. I don't know how I'm going to survive 2 more days of this. Early morning becomes late morning, and I swing from misery to anger and back again. I just don't understand why Amos completely ditched me the way he did, and why he seems angry at me. As I fume over him in my mind, I've about decided that even if he apologizes now, I have no interest in speaking to him again. Memory hits me hard. I don't know what I did, but I remember clearly when I found out that Amos and I were definitely not best friends. It happened in the school cafeteria at the beginning of May, just 2 weeks before school ended. I had my usual brown bag lunch full of turkey and cheese sandwich, a thermos of milk, and 3 chocolate chip cookies tucked in foil. Gym class had ended 10 minutes ago and my stomach was howling at me. Who knew pickleball could be so intense? I arrived at my usual table, plunked down my food, and dug in. Halfway through my sandwich, I realized something was wrong. Amos and I had always eaten lunch together, and he had always gotten to the same lunch table ahead of me. I could understand if he was a little late, but as the minutes ticked by, I started to get worried. I glanced at the empty chair next to me and frowned. Something must have happened to him. Maybe he got sick and had to go home early. Maybe Terry had gotten sick and he had to go home early. Maybe a sinkhole had opened underneath his homeroom and he had to go home early. But when I looked around the cafeteria, I spotted Amos's familiar jet black hair among the crowd, at the opposite end of the room from where we normally sit. He was sitting between his classmates Naomi and Omen, and there were no other seats at that table. Amos seemed to sense my eyes on him. He tilted his head around and looked at me. His eyes darted back and forth, and then he looked down. "Amos! Hey, Amos!" I called, my voice loud enough to carry across the whole cafeteria. Amos didn't wait for me to come over, and he didn't look at me again. "Amos!" I yelled. I shuffled my lunch back into the bag and stood up. "Will you stop screaming?" Jessie Cavaretta from the cool girl table shouted. She gave me the arched eyebrow of death. "You're murdering my eardrums." Normally, I'd roll my eyes and toss Jessie a good zinger, but instead I strode toward Amos, my high-top sneakers gobbling up the space between us. Why was he sitting somewhere else, without telling me, and at a table that I couldn't join? Naomi leaned over and whispered something to Amos. He jerked his head up and looked at me, and utter panic filled his face. He leapt to his feet so fast the plastic chair he was sitting on screeched and fell over with a clatter. He grabbed his lunch bag and some cookies fell out, but he didn't stop to pick them up. Instead, he bolted for the back doors of the cafeteria and disappeared into the hallway beyond. Suddenly, I felt so exposed, standing alone in a crowded lunchroom with kids around me, laughing, chatting, squealing, all of them with their own little tribe of people bound up in close-knit groups that I wasn't a part of, because I didn't care about belonging with other kids and their little cliques. Why would I need them when there's only ever been Amos and me at lunch? It was always the two of us huddled around the smallest table in the cafeteria, swapping food and horrible puns and making each other feel like we didn't need anybody else. And now, apparently, Amos didn't need me either. I felt dizzy. Suddenly, everything seemed to get louder. It was as if I were underwater, being pummeled by the sounds I couldn't understand. I stumbled back to my seat and spent the rest of the lunch lonely and confused. I tried to tell myself that it was just a misunderstanding, that he had a meeting with a teacher that he had to run off to, but nothing made sense. I decided I would meet up with Amos after school and sort out what was going on. We'd been through everything together. This wouldn't be any different. When I went to his locker at the last bell, Amos was there, shoving textbooks into his bag. "Hey," I said, shifting my backpack from one side to the other. "What was that all about in lunch?" Amos slammed his locker shut and clicked his combo lock into place. "It's nothing." My hand flew onto my hips. "Did I do something wrong? If so, I'm sorry, but I don't think I did anything that would make you mad at me." "Just forget it," he said, looking everywhere but at me. "You're being weird. Talk to me, Amos," I told him. "It's not worth it." Amos turned and began to walk away from me with stiff, straight shoulders. "Amos, wait!" I called after him. Amos didn't stop, and he didn't wait. Suddenly, it's like I'm back on my front porch watching my dad leave all over again. For the second time in a month, I'm watching someone I love and trust deliberately walk away from me without an explanation, and there's nothing I can do. An awful pain twists through my heart and spreads like fingernails clawing up my throat. I fight it, but I can't stop the scalding tears that flood across my face. "Fine then," I scream after Amos. "I can walk away too." I wrenched my gaze from Amos and marched to my locker, took out my backpack, and banged the door shut. As I walked home, I thought about how Amos had said he'd always be there for me. Turns out, he was a liar, just like my dad. From that moment on until this trip, we hadn't said a word to each other. Not even one measly hey. Chapter 5. My stomach grumbles, bringing me back to the present. I realize that we haven't seen our parents in hours. I know that Mom trusts me on the river, but I want to know that we're at least close to her and Terry. "Amos, we should catch up to them," I finally say, breaking the silence between us. "Well, if we didn't have a dog, maybe we would be able to," Amos replies. "What does Cheerio have to do with catching up?" My fingers grip the paddle a little more tightly. "This canoe is 50 pounds heavier because of her. That's 50 pounds of baggage to pull." I don't like the way Amos called Cheerio baggage. "What's your deal with my dog?" I ask, lifting my paddle up and twisting to fire my best glare at Amos. "Oh, why'd you have to bring her?" Amos lifts up his paddle too. "She won't stay still and she makes the boat rock. She can't paddle and can't help out. And you're not paddling half the time because you're trying to make her feel better. Why didn't you just leave her at home?" "Because she's my dog and I wanted to take her on this trip." "Well, try and make an exception for once. You're being selfish. You know Cheerio would rather just be at home in her bed. Instead, you have to drag her onto a boat and keep her trapped in it for days," Amos shouts. He might be right, but I'm too mad to care. "Don't you dare tell me what's better for my dog," I sputter at him and begin to paddle furiously. Behind me, I hear fast, wild splashing. I guess Amos is picking up the tempo too. We begin to skim across the water, both of us raging and pulling. When you're canoeing, the most efficient way to move is for your strokes to match your partner's. It's like having double power all at once instead of being off each other's beat. When you're pulling and your partner isn't, it feels like you're carrying the weight of the boat all by yourself. All morning long, Amos and I had been off, but for whatever reason, now our dual anger makes us paddle in sync. I'm not just mad about Cheerio. Every stroke brings me back to the cafeteria and the moment when Amos sliced off our friendship. Stroke, slice. Stroke, slice. It's like I'm in an awful memory loop, watching him abandon me over and over. As the past floods my brain, I stop paying attention to the river. I bet Amos is lost in his anger too, though why he's so resentful, I have no clue. The boat seems to leap and skim over the water. We're doing our best to get away from each other, all the while being stuck in the same canoe. I think about a hamster on a wheel, running as fast as it can, going nowhere. I vow never to get a hamster or a hamster wheel. My arms start to ache. I want to slow my pace, but Amos isn't letting up, so I'm not either. An hour tumbles by. We pass thick spruce forests that grow right up to the edges of the bank and meadows filled with wildflowers. I barely notice, instead keeping my head mostly down, except to comfort Cheerio. It occurs to me that I haven't been paying attention to where we're going. Mom said keep river right, but we could be going in circles for all I know. But it doesn't matter. I'm not the one steering. Amos is. Just when I think my arms are about to fall out of their sockets, I feel the canoe slow down. Amos has stopped paddling. Finally, I say, lifting my paddle out of the water and letting it rest against my knees. My stomach lets out a howl and I realize that it's way past lunchtime. Without looking around, I speak to Amos. We need to stop and eat. Pull over somewhere. There's still no movement behind me and no reply. I tilt my head back and roll my eyes. Amos, stop messing around and get us to shore. Marlo, do you hear that? I pause. I wasn't expecting that question. Hear what? The water. It's loud. After wallowing so deep in my anger that I've been mostly numb to my surroundings, all my senses suddenly become hyper-aware. A roar fills my ears as I look down at the water beside me. It's moving fast, faster than I've ever seen it. Glancing up, my stomach plunges. It's as if the river stops being. It ends in a sharp line about 300 yards ahead of us. I've never been in this situation, but I know exactly what I'm seeing. A waterfall. My mind races. Are these the rapids my mom was talking about? No way, my mom would never lead us over a falls. We must have taken a wrong turn somewhere while we were fighting and distracted. I wrench myself around and look for Mom and Terry. All I see is Amos, packed bags that don't belong to me, and Cheerio, who lets out a whine that becomes a series of yelps. Amos, get us to shore, now! I shout. I look around frantically. The left bank seems just a little nearer, so I dig my paddle into the water and begin to downstroke. It's true that the person in front doesn't usually have a lot of control over the direction of the boat, but the draw stroke is designed for the front paddler to use when they want to change directions in a hurry. I turn, facing left, and plunge my paddle into the water. Yanking the paddle toward the boat, I put every muscle into that stroke. The bow turns left. I continue to downstroke frantically, but it's as if the boat is fighting me, and it seesaws between right and left, keeping us in the middle of the river as the current sweeps us toward the waterfall. We're at 200 yards until the drop, and then 100. A thought occurs to me. Amos, I holler, which side are you trying to get us to? The right, he yells back. Ugh, I clench my teeth. I've been steering left. Left is closer. No, it's not. Yes, it is. 50 yards ahead of us, the water tumbles and crashes. Marlo, we don't have time to argue. Head right, Amos screams. We are not going to make it. My paddle hovers, frozen above my legs. I'm panicking and I don't know what to do. Cheerio's yelping turns into full-on barking. She's pacing across the tiny section of the boat that is hers, and the canoe rocks with her. At one point, we tip to one side so hard that water starts spilling in. I've got to get her to stop moving. I transfer the paddle to my left hand, turn around, and lay a firm hand on Cheerio's back. Cheerio, sit. My voice sounds thin and uncertain. Cheerio lets out a high-pitched bark and half leaps out of the canoe. She isn't listening. Seeing her so distressed snaps me into protector mode. I can't let her jump out of the canoe. I grab her collar and pull her into the center of the canoe. Sit, I say, willing my voice to be firm and strong. Lie down. It works. Cheerio whines, but she settles onto her haunches and then lowers the front of her body so she's at the bottom of the canoe. Good girl, I tell her. Marlo, I need your help, Amos cries. Keeping Cheerio safe for now won't matter if we all go over the edge. I listen to Amos, let go of Cheerio, and begin to downstroke right, as if my life depends on it. And in this case, it's not just a saying. Working together, Amos and I manage to turn the boat toward shore. But we overcorrect, and now we're perpendicular to the current. The river wells up against the side of the canoe and spills into the boat. I jam my paddle into the water and wrench hard as if I'm prying up a stubborn nail with a crowbar. The canoe jerks left, and now we're diagonal to shore. Paddle! I yell. We're skimming across the water, beelining toward the riverbank, completely in sync with each other. If I wasn't so scared, I'd be marveling at how quick and light everything feels as we power our way toward safety. Each stroke is deliberate and forceful, each lift and dig in unison. It's not enough. Cheerio howls as the current overpowers us, sweeping our canoe over the falls. Chapter 6. I know we're falling as fast as gravity will take us, but our vertical drop seems to be going in slow motion. My hands fly up as I lean back, as if I'm on a roller coaster ride I didn't sign up for. As the water takes us down, there are only two things I'm determined to hold on to. I clutch my paddle in a death grip with my left hand. If I lose it, then there's no way that anything is going to end well. Foamy spray hits my face as I reach behind me and wrap my arm around Cheerio. Paddle and dog. That's all that's important to me right now. The bow of the canoe hits the bottom of the falls with a mighty smack. The stern rises overhead, and for a horrific second, I think the whole canoe is going to flip bow over stern, dumping us and all of our supplies into the river. But then the stern falls back and the bow noses up, bursting through the surface of the water. I release Cheerio and strike the water with my paddle. We need to move away from the falls, or we're going to get sucked into the plunge pool. Go, 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 Amos yells behind me. He knows the danger of where we are, too. The waterfall fights us, pulling the stern of the boat back. I don't have to look back to know that Amos is getting the worst of this since he's in the stern. And yet as we go into berserker mode, our arms pinwheeling as we stroke wildly, I can feel us moving in unison. The falls may be crashing down on Amos, but he's fighting with me, not against me. Our teamwork pays off. Inch by inch we battle our way forward, wrestling the boat out of the basin until it breaks free and glides into the waters downstream. I don't dare to stop paddling until the sound of the falls fade. Then, when we are well into the calmer water, I finally give my aching arms a break. I lift my paddle up and slide it along the side of the boat. When I turn around to assess the damage, I met with a warm, slobbery tongue. Cheerio! I didn't want to get more wet than I already am, but I'll take her kisses. I wrap my arms around my drenched dog. Cheerio shakes, rocking the boat as she flings water all over me. I don't care. She's still with me, and that's all that matters. After I give her a fierce hug, my eyes travel down the length of the boat. Even though none of the supplies in the canoe are mine, I can tell that we didn't lose anything from the way there aren't any sudden open spaces. Mom had helped Amos and Terry lash down their gear, and her expert packing had saved all their belongings. Then I look at the back of the boat. Amos's dark hair is plastered to his skull. River water drips down his face. There isn't an inch of him that isn't soaked. What kind of a trip did your mom take us on? He splutters. Why would she send us down to waterfall? She wouldn't, I glare at Amos. She's one of the best river guides in the state, and there's no way she would bring us this way, especially knowing your dad is a beginner. Great. Amos wads up the front of his shirt and starts to wring it out with clenched fists. Then we must have taken a wrong turn somewhere. We, I mutter. I wasn't the one steering. He either doesn't hear me or decides to ignore me. He leans over his pack and rummages around in the top pocket until he finds a folded up map. Here, he says, handing it to me, figure out where we are. I open the map and try to decipher where we are, but I just can't see it. We're in a really narrow channel, but the river on the map is one big thick line. As I look up at our surroundings and down at the map, all the markers that are supposed to tell me our location blur into a jumble of confusion. It doesn't help that adrenaline is shooting through me, making it hard to concentrate. Finally, I shake my head and hand the map back to Amos. I can't. I don't understand where we came from or where we're going or where we are, I tell him. You try. Amos squints at the map and then looks up and then looks down at it again. He sighs. This doesn't make any sense. No kidding. I look downriver. There's a bend up ahead, which doesn't help me figure out where we are. We must have just gone down a different branch from the main line. If we keep going, I'm sure we'll join back up to it. Shouldn't we just try and contact our parents? Amos asks. They can't be too far ahead of us. I brightened. If your dad and mom are nearby, maybe we could reach them. Do you have anything that we can use to call them? A phone? A radio? Amos shakes his head. Dad didn't let me bring my phone. He said we wouldn't have reception anyway, and he didn't want me to lose it. And you can go through our stuff, but I'm pretty sure we didn't bring a radio. I slump. If there's no way to contact our parents, then they still might not know that we took a wrong turn, which I blame on you since you were the one steering. Oh, so it's my fault? Amos's voice rises. I ignored him. Since you didn't keep to the river right, like Mom said, we just need to keep going until we link back up to the main river, and then we can wait for them. And how will we know if we've joined back with the main river? Amos asks. Easy, I say. It'll be like a mile wide, and all the branches of the Yukon have got to meet back up at the main river. I tell this to Amos, remembering the quick look I took at the map this morning and how all the branches seem to meet back up at the main river. But I'm not entirely sure I'm right. I just want it to be true. What are the odds that we went down the one branch that dead-ended in grizzlies and thick Alaskan bush? I crossed my fingers. Non-existent, I hope. I'm trying to think how we can know for certain that we're going where we should be when I remember something Mom told me in the truck. Cabins! I yelp. Amos's eyes brighten and he tracks my gaze. Where? Sorry, not here. I feel momentarily bad for lifting Amos's hopes. Mom told me that there were a couple of cabins along the river. If we come to one of them, we'll know for sure that we're back on the main branch. Do you know where along the river they are? Amos asks me. I shake my head. I didn't pay attention to that detail. Amos looks like he wants to snip at me, but then he sighs. Me neither. Okay, well, let's just start going then. He rubs a hand over one of his arms. It'll be good to start paddling again. I'm starting to get cold. I realize that I'm cold too. As we canoe down the river, the sunlit air begins to cool, and as the afternoon deepens into early dusk, a chilly wind starts to rake across the river. The river doesn't get wider. At first, I keep my eyes fixed on the riverbank, looking for a cabin tucked into the trees, but then I realize there's no point. We are definitely still on a smaller branch of the river. Both of us are shivering by now from the cold as well as lack of food. We should have had lunch ages ago, but we haven't stopped since going over the falls. Finally, when the sun is dipping toward the horizon and we round yet another bend without any sign of civilization, I have to call it. Amos, we're not going to find it today. We need to get to shore and make camp. Fine, Amos replies. I spot a sandbank about 500 yards downriver. Let's get there, I say, pointing toward it. It's too far, Amos chatters. I'm getting us to shore right now. I frown. Right now? That doesn't make sense. There's nothing but scrub next to us. It would make a terrible camp spot. I don't care. It's the first sentence Amos has been able to say without his teeth chattering. I need to get out of the canoe and I need to get warm. But if we go just a little farther... No, Marlowe. Amos digs his paddle into the water. The boat twists toward shore. Yes, I dig my paddle into the opposite direction. We're fighting each other for control of the canoe, and because he's in the back, Amos wins. 100 yards downriver, we run aground against the rocky shore with only about 20 feet of camping area before we'll run into the dense thicket. Before I can shove us back into the river, Amos jumps out. He sinks to his thighs in the water and wades ashore. Got to get warm, he says, as he begins to do jumping jacks. I look downriver. There's a wide, sandy, flat bank just a few hundred yards away that would be a much better place to break for the night. Amos, get back in the canoe, I demand. We're so close to the perfect camp spot. Amos doesn't listen to me. He just keeps jumping. I can't get him to do what I want. Giving up, I store my paddle and swing my legs over the gunwale. Because I'm in front, I only sink in up to my ankles. Gah! I gasp, a little frightened at how freezing cold the water is. I have to haul the canoe a few more inches ashore to keep it from floating away. I grab the bow and tug, but nothing happens. Cheerio, out, I say, and Cheerio leaps onto the rocks. Now the canoe is 50 pounds lighter. The next time I pull, I'm not strong enough to get the canoe completely out of the water, but it's far enough to keep it anchored on shore for the night. Thanks for helping, I grumble to Amos. I'll help. I just need to get warm first, he replies. Well, I'm not going to sit around and wait. I untie the ropes holding down the supplies and begin tossing the packs onto the ground. Everything is unfamiliar to me, so I just start opening everything and pulling out whatever's inside. I'm mad, I'm hungry and cold, and Amos isn't doing a thing to hurry up the process of making camp. I find Amos's tent toward the bottom of the supply pile. As I undo the drawstring, I see a bear can poking out from underneath Amos's pack. I'm pretty sure it's full of food. Could you maybe make us some dinner while I pitch the tent? I say loudly over my shoulder. There's no response. I whirl around exasperated, ready to lash out. Amos is sitting on the ground with his knees pressed up to his chest. He's shaking, and I can see his hands vibrating uncontrollably against his shins. His lips are blue. Chapter 7. Amos! I drop the bag and run over to him. I kneel and take his hands in mine. They are as pale as a fish's and very, very cold. I begin to rub them. Amos, are you okay? Amos closes his eyes. Why would you care, he mumbles, and his head rolls back listlessly. Mom has taught me the signs of hypothermia, and Amos is showing all of them. Shaking, slurred speech, drowsiness. If he gets any colder, we're going to have a medical situation on our hands, in the backcountry, miles away from help and all alone. My anger melts away. You need to get warm right now. I leap toward Amos's pack and pull out his sleeping bag and a pair of pajamas. Luckily, they're still dry. I go over to Amos and lay them next to him. Change right now and get into your sleeping bag. I bark at him. I turn my back on him to give him some privacy and dive into making the tent. The setup is unfamiliar to me, but my mind is hyper-focused and the shelter comes together in a few fluid minutes. I stake down the vestibule. I don't bother with the corners. Once the tent is pitched, I find Amos's inflatable mattress pad and huff air into it till it's nice and firm. I twist the valve closed, chuck it into the tent, and then shoo Amos inside. Stay there, I tell him. Get warm. I zip the tent closed so the wind can't get to him. By now, my own teeth are starting to chatter. I don't have any of my clothes, so I rummage through Terry's pack and change into some oversized pants and men's extra-large socks. I know I look ridiculous, but at least I'm dry and warm. Next, I open the bear can. Inside are rice and beans, makings for another pasta dinner, energy bars, and packets of Swiss Miss. I grab 2 energy bars and open the tent. Eat these right now, I tell Amos. He nods and reaches for the bars, his hands wobbling crazily. They're still white down to the wrists. While Amos eats, I fire up the camping stove and cook a quick pasta dinner. It doesn't have Mom's herbs and flavorings, but it's got lots of calories, which is the only thing Amos needs right now. Once the pasta has been boiled and sauce slathered over it, I carry the entire pot into the tent. Dinner time, I announce, holding up 2 forks. Amos tries to take one of them, but his hand is shaking too badly. I sit down next to him and drop the pasta pot between us using a small towel I found in one of the packs as a pot holder. I'm going to feed you. I feel strange doing this for a friend, not, say, a baby, but Amos is in such a state that it's the only choice he or I have. I loop some pasta onto a fork. I think about doing a little airplane swoop with it, but that would be way too weird. Instead, I hold it up to Amos's mouth, and he takes it in. He's already had 2 energy bars, but there's something about hot food that electrifies his face. A small, satisfied grunt comes out of him. After a few mouthfuls of steaming food, Amos sits up and pokes his arm out of his sleeping bag. I think I can handle a fork now, he tells me. I give him a fork, and together we begin wolfing down the rest of the noodles. Amos's hand coordination isn't great, and he keeps dropping food, but luckily he's eating over the pot, so there's no mess. The meal warms us from inside, and I feel myself starting to relax as the bottom of the pot comes into sight. We finish dinner, scraping every last spaghetti strand into our mouths. Now that I'm fed, I feel a lot less scared. Amos reaches to take the fork. I can do dishes, he said. No, stay. I've got this. I reply. You're warm now, but you need to stay warm. An idea comes to me. Would you like your own little heater? Amos looks puzzled. Where are you going to find one? Right here. I unzip the tent flap and call it a cheerio. She comes bounding into the tent. I wrap her in the outside of Terry's sleeping bag and then guide her over to settle next to Amos's chest. You can hug her for warmth. I've done it 1,000,000 times, I tell him. For a moment, Amos looks like he's about to say no, but tiredness sweeps over his face. He lies down and pulls Cheerio close. Well, I guess this is nice, he sighs. Good. I take a look at Amos's hand. It's not as bone white as it used to be, but his fingers still haven't gotten their color back yet. He's still on the edge. I gather up the pot and forks and give him a quick rinse in the river. Then I boil some water and pour it into 2 cups that I found in the bear can. I tip a packet of Swiss Miss into each cup. Then I tip 2 more packets into one of the cups before heading back to the tent. Amos is asleep. I gently shake him awake. Dessert, I tell him, handing him the extra chocolatey cup. He drinks it in small, slow sips. When he's done, he settles back into his sleeping bag. Thanks, he mumbles, and then he's asleep again. It's late now, late enough to need a headlamp. I go outside one final time, wash up, store our food and anything that smells like food in the bear can, and wedge it in between 2 rocks at the edge of the thicker forest. It's technically way too close to the tent, but I can't move it farther without having to get in the water, and I decide to risk having it nearby, at least for tonight. It's getting really cold. I dig out a hatchet from Amos's dad's pack. I start hacking away at some of the brush by the edge of the river, intent on making us a fire to get even warmer. But after a few minutes, I set the hatchet down by the river and squat in the dirt, my muscles aching and my head fuzzy. I'm just too tired. I haul myself to my feet and stumble back to the tent. I crawl inside and exhaustion hits me in one big wave. I'm barely in my sleeping bag before my eyelids close. Wait, my brain says, you can't go to sleep, not just yet. My brain is right. I shouldn't be sleepy. I should be terrified. A bear could come in the night and eat all our food. A storm could hit us tomorrow and turn the day into a freezing cold nightmare. I'm in the middle of nowhere with no way of knowing if the choices I'm making are the ones that will actually keep me alive. My eyes fly open. On top of all that, there's Amos. I have to make sure he's not getting worse. If he is, I just might lose it. I shine the headlamp on his face. His lips aren't blue anymore. Amos squinches up his nose. Quit it, he grumbles, shielding his eyes from the headlamp's glare. Amos's grumpiness is coming back. His hypothermia must be getting better. Another hour passes, and finally Amos's lips and hands go back to normal. Relief tinges through me. I burrow into my sleeping bag and turn off my headlamp. Night, Amos, I say. There's no answer, just the sound of soft snoring and the occasional dog woof. As night deepens and the sound of howling wolves surround us, I finally drift off to sleep. Even though there's still a lot of unresolved feelings between us, I'm glad Amos is still alive. After all, I can't paddle the canoe all by myself. Well, the title of this book is coming true, isn't it? Work together or sink together. Their fighting got them in a lot of trouble that day when they went over the falls, and so they're going to have to learn to work together in order to find their parents and to make it down the river together. How would you react being out in the wilderness like that? I don't know if I could do that. I would want an adult with me. I would want somebody with me who knew what they were doing out in the wilderness. It seems like they have a pretty good idea about how to canoe, but without a map and without knowing where their parents are, it's becoming a lot more dangerous. And there are a lot of adventures the next day and the next as they travel downriver trying to find their parents. This is a great story. Off the Map by Meika Hashimoto. This has been Chapter Book Storytime. Thank you for joining me. Goodbye.